Hello, everyone that is in currently. Thank you so much for being here. We'll start in a few minutes. My counterpart is finishing up his uh, previous session. And once he gets in here, we'll wait a little bit. We'll get started. So, again, thank you so much for coming. We'll be on in just a bit.
Hey, Andy, I'm here. If you can hear me.
All right, do you hear me?
Yep.
Great. We can get started. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the IT requirements section of the first day of the IHSEA 2021 High School Esports Conference. My name is Andy Mendez, and I am the CTO here at the IHSEA. And with me is Mr. Brock Frazier. Brock, if you'd like.
Yeah. Sorry. Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining us. I apologize. I did just come from a previous session, so right into this one, kind of regather myself. I'm the lead IT technician of Mass Act Unit 1 district. I've helped in our local area and throughout the state kind of, help get information out and get other teams and esports and functions and stuff going, as well as not just Southern Illinois and Illinois, but as Western Kentucky areas also. So again, Massac County High School Esports Coordinator, head coach, and the one of the IT technicians.
And as I briefly mentioned, I'm the Chief Technology Officer here at the Illinois High School Esports Association, and I'm a support analyst for IT support analyst, I should say, at Naperville Community Unit School District 203. My esports background is I'm the director for both high schools, Naperville North and Naperville Central High School, and we've built 2 labs in those high schools as well. So today we're going to talk a little bit about IT requirements and hopefully answer some questions that you may have regarding hardware and network requirements for esports working in the scholastic space. So I'm going to go ahead and toss it over to Brock here, and we'll get started.
Thanks, Andy. Kind of going over some of the hardware requirements. I'm going to do a breakdown of each game, kind of give you some minimum to recommended specs for if you were looking at building some computers and kind of open it up some different options for your students. Going to go over League of Legends, Overwatch, Valorant, Rocket League, Fortnite, and Super Smash Bros. With League of Legends, you're looking minimum, and if you've ever played League of Legends, it'll run on almost anything. So some of these minimum specs, 2 gigahertz processor, as long as it supports the SSE2 instruction set, 2 gig of RAM, 8 gig of hard drive space, very low shader capable 2.0 video card. And a lot of them you're going to see they'll all function on Windows 7, 8, and 10 with, you definitely want to have your latest service packs, and then obviously the 64-bit. You're looking at running screen resolution 1920, 1200. League of Legends does not take a lot to run, so you can easily run 720p up to to the 1080p, depending on what your monitor can be capable of. So a lot of the League of Legends, recommended wise, even just 3 gigahertz processor, that 2 gig of RAM to 4 gig of RAM, 12 gig hard drive space. If you ever had the League of Legends client, you're going to notice that they're going to update periodically and they're going to have new things come out, but it's not very taxing on your, hard drive because a lot of it is client based. Then your dedicated GPU 512 megabyte or higher with the VRAM, and then again 7, 8, and 10 on the Windows, and then screen resolutions and 720p to 1080p and on are going to be very similar. League of Legends is definitely one of the least taxing games that you're going to see competitively played through esports for sure. With Overwatch, you're taking a step up. So in my previous session, I talked about a little bit with some of the gifting grant computers we got through State Farm. They kind of gave us some laptops and things, and they were capable of running League of Legends, but Overwatch was way too much for them as a processor. So, kind of has to take a step up for the minimum and recommended on there. So you're looking at least an i3 to the comparative AMD Phenom X3, 4 gig of RAM, 30 gig hard drive space. It is a little bit more, but nowadays the hard drive, that we put in these computers are way more than the 30 gig mark. NVIDIA GeForce GTX 460. That's a low end graphics card, so not too taxing there. Also ATI Radeon, you can do that, or even the Intel HD integrated graphics 4400. So again, looking at 7, 8, 10, 64-bit, similar resolution. You can run at 1024, 768 for that 30, I'd say, FPS. Maybe you might be able to push it to a little higher there on the minimum. But if you move up to the recommended, if you get an i5 or higher, AMD Phenom 2 X3, you get that 6 gig of RAM, which Nowadays, even that, 6 gig of RAM is pretty low. Most of the computers pre-built or the ones you're building yourself are going to have 8, 16, and beyond on that. So generally not too bad, not too taxing, and not uncommon for you to have what would be recommended and what would be able to run these games. So 30 gig hard drive space, looking at maybe jumping to a GeForce GTX 660 or AMD Radeon HD 7950. And then you again 7, 8, 10, all that. So still not too bad. And kind of touching base on a lot of pre-built and a lot of the computers that are out now blow these even recommended specs out of the water if you get one of those higher end gaming computers, because you're looking at an i7 or like a Ryzen 5, Ryzen 7, things like that. And then the GPUs, you got the 30 series out now. But even the 1070s and beyond are going to eat some of these games up easily, and you'll get that 60 frame rate, pretty easily. So Valorant, pretty similar to Overwatch as far as your GPU and your CPU taxation. With the hard drive disk space, again, it kind of runs with Riot. It's more client based, so you're not having to download a lot of stuff onto your own hard drive. So that is nicer. So you got the 11 gig hard drive space mark. Again, 4 to 6 on the minimum of the RAM. Going back to i3, Intel Core 2 Duo. And then you got at least a GeForce GT 730 or an Intel. Again, you can do that HD 400 or 4000. I'm sorry. Pretty easy to run Valorant as well. It's again a little step up on more recommended as the League of Legends goes, but not too bad. Even recommended, you're looking at i5 3.2 or better, 6 to 8 gigs. I always say that 8 gigs it used to be the sweet spot for pretty much all gaming. It still is, I'd say, for most esports games. Whereas the high end games, probably that 16 gig and beyond is a little more common. Similar 11 gig hard drive space, GTX 1050 Ti or better. Again, you're looking at probably 1070s in even some of the older built ones. So I don't think that'd be difficult to find any of those older graphics cards. I say that, but a lot of the graphics cards are kind of hit and miss right now. There is definitely a lot of short supply on those, but hopefully that will get better moving forward. Rocket League. I'm going to start saying, okay, Rocket League can be played on your PlayStation and Xbox and things like that. So those have their own set of, minimum recommended requirements, or basically what's built into those devices. But a lot of the competitive play, they're having you play through PC. So I wanted to break down with Rocket League as well. On the minimum, you're looking 2.5 gigahertz dual core, 4 gigabyte of RAM, 20 gig hard drive space. It does take a little bit more. Again, it should not be an issue. NVIDIA GeForce 760 or an AMD Radeon R7 270X or better, of course. Again, 7810, 64-bit. And then it should generally run 720p with the similarity of the resolution, screen size, and things like that. Recommended. This is one of those with League of Legends. It doesn't really take a whole lot to run Rocket League. A little more processing power because you got a lot more stuff moving around, pixelation, things like that going on. So 3.0 gigahertz processor, quad core or better. Looking at 8 gig of RAM. That's hitting that sweet spot, as like I call it. 20 gig hard drive space, and then you'll move up to an NVIDIA GeForce GTX 1060 or AMD Radeon RX 470 or better. Fortnite, that's another one of them, and you'll kind of see this as we go through. A lot of these games that are competitive are not too taxing on devices, but minimum on that, Intel i3 2.4, you're looking 4 gig of RAM again, 16 gig hard drive space, Intel HD 4000 integrated graphics, Windows, of course, 7810, screen resolution can run 720 to 1080. On the recommended, and I think I messed up on the RAM there, that should be 4 and above, basically, on that 3 gigahertz processor. Excuse me, 12 gig of RAM or 12 gig hard drive space. Sorry, NVIDIA GeForce GTX 660 or that AMD equivalent Radeon HD 7870, and then of course better. If you know anything about building computers and things like that, you can always get higher end graphics cards and more RAM, up to the 30 something mark on the RAM. And then similarly, Windows 10, of course, and then you can run 1080p or even up, I think, up to 4K, depending on what your monitor and things like that will host. Smash Bros, you're looking at console only, no PC build really for this. It's going to run off your Switch, but I did want to break down between the Switch itself and then the Switch Lite. A lot of the competitive stuff, if you've ever played Smash Bros, or if you know a student that really wants to be competitive in Smash Bros, they really do not like playing over Wi-Fi competitively. It's more of an in-person thing that they would prefer, but there are options to play competitively through Wi-Fi and through LAN. With the Nintendo Switch, both of these will have an NVIDIA custom Tegra processor. You're looking at 32 base to 64 base gigabyte storage, and then either one of these you can boost up through to even 2 terabyte with your SD cards and things like that. The video output hooked up to a TV with Smash Bros on just the Switch, you can do a 1080p. But if you're doing through the built-in screen, you're looking at 720p on that. The good thing with the Smash Brothers, again, talking about how competitive players, if you've ever experienced, they generally prefer to play through like the GameCube adapter and controllers or a Pro controller and things like that. Those are all available through the Switch itself, and you're able to play, when you hook up through a TV and some of the tournaments and things, you're able to use all those different controllers and options there. Whereas the Nintendo Switch, you're basically just limited to the built-in controls, the Joy-Cons that are basically built into the device itself. So I don't really recommend Nintendo Switch for a competitive side of it, but if you have a casual club side, Nintendo Switch could be a way to allow other students to play and experience Super Smash Bros and other Nintendo titles, of course. So I kind of gave a couple of mock builds here, and I will say, and I think we're going to touch on this a little bit further in the presentation. When you move forward and purchasing any of this equipment, just be smart about it. Do due diligence. You might get someone telling you that they'll sell you a gaming rig that's got an MSI gaming motherboard with 36 gigs of RAM and whatever. Knowing the specs of these games going in casual and competitive, that you don't need really a 30 series graphics card. You don't. I as much as I want one and I want everybody to have one, you really don't need one. You could look at, like on this mock build one I did with Intel, GTX 1070 or better, you can run pretty much any of these games. But if you can get a 30 series, more power to you. But moving into that, you got to know that these items are going to increase the cost per. And we come from kind of a lower or a higher free reduced lunch area, higher poverty area, and it's a smaller town. So trying to get 13 gaming rigs or 12 gaming rigs, all with 3090s in them, with very little funding, it's kind of hard to do. But 1070s and 1080s, knowing that going into that, and they're able to run all the games that are being competitive right now, that's going to be a lot easier on our budget. So you're looking at that, again, that sweet spot, I like to call it 8 gigs of RAM to 16 gig and more. You can always do more DDR4 RAM. And then your motherboard, Intel gaming style, I would start from the 300 series up to the 500 series. That's me personally. You could probably get away with going a little bit older on the series of that. And then the AMD side of it as well, your CPU is going to be equivalent with the i5, AMD Ryzen 5 or better. So just like i7, i9, your Ryzen 7, Ryzen 9, GPU RX 580 or better. GPU, the 580, I do believe, is equivalent to the 1070, and then your 5700 and 6000 is going to be equivalent to like the 1080 and your 30 series cards right now. And then your RAM, again, 8 to 16 gig, AMD compatible with the DDR4. And then the motherboard, I always say AMD gaming style, you could go from the X570 to the WRX 80 series on that. And that's about equivalent to the 300 to 500 series for the Intel. But again, if you kind of go out there and you normally I would say, hey, build your own computers. It used to be that was the cheapest way to do it. And I always like doing that with the students because you can really kind of drive home on that extra trade skill activity of them learning how to actually build a PC. I always enjoy doing that myself. But now the pre-builts, with the way the graphics cards and CPUs and the short supply of a lot of things, a lot of times you can get pre-built ones for even a little cheaper because you'll have even high-end graphics cards in there where you're not spending $1,500 for just the graphics card, but instead you might be spending $1,000 to $1,500 for the whole build of the PC. So I would definitely, put your feelers out there. I know Bytespeed being one of our sponsors, I will, talk about that. And I'm actually currently using this myself. They have a kind of a program where you can get a quote and you can kind of go in there and pre-build your computer and mix and match different parts and things like that and print out a quote. And that's what we did, and took it to our city and kind of told them what we were wanting to do, and our school board and things like that. And that really helped us kind of give, information out there where, how much this would cost to properly equipped. And then also knowing if you go lower on a GPU or lower on a CPU, you may not get as much use out of a computer. You may have to upgrade it in 3 years. You may have to upgrade it in, 2 years, depending, or at least switch out a graphics card. So, it's all got a lot of leeway there. If you get that 500 series motherboard versus the 300 series, or if you get the 30 series graphics card, you may buy yourself 8 to 10 years of use of that computer easily. And it could move from that competitive side to the casual side. So you get a lot more functionality out of that, depending on how much money you want to spend.
Thanks, Brock. I'm going to go over a little bit of our networking quirks, and then we'll talk a little bit more about purchasing as well later on in the conversation here. So with some networking, if anyone here does networking for their school districts or for their organizations, we use a virtual local area network for our labs at Naperville 203. The reason why we did this is we could take those Windows machines and put them on their own policies and give them a little bit of a less restrictive environment than the rest of our previous computer labs that we've had in the building. Now, computer labs have kind of shifted away with students having one-to-one on Chromebooks. But this is, again, done to avoid the need for an administrator to approve every download. And that's just because, as Brock mentioned previously in our conversation here, games update and patch all the time, especially League of Legends, Overwatch, Rocket League. They will patch. Overwatch seems to be one of the games that is really good about randomly sending out patches. Unfortunately, League of Legends will send out a patch, I believe, every 2 weeks for game balance and whatnot. But nevertheless, you want to avoid any downtime for your students, especially if they're coming right after school to play in a tournament game, and all of a sudden they need to update, and just adding another layer of tension and kind of blocks the students from having being able to play the games that they need to play. Also, on top of that, we ran into some issues with students bringing in their own custom hardware, which is perfectly fine for us as long as they're bringing in peripherals that they need to use. So as far as plugging in a mouse and a keyboard is concerned, typically those are plug and play. However, things like Razer or Logitech have their own onboard software that they use to tune their mice and keyboard to their specific needs when they're about to play. And to us, it made sense to allow them to do that. Just because you wouldn't want to go out on the football field with pads that are too big for you, and you're now clunking around and trying to make something happen on the field. So we want to make sure that our kids are best equipped. And so with that being said, though, we keep very tight locks on those machines as far as throughout the school day. They're not used at all for us in particular. I know that a lot of to make it more accessible, a lot of school districts will use multi-purpose labs like CAD labs and whatnot for their esports programs. Just specifically here at Naperville, we do have a dedicated lab that we only open up in the after-school hours with a coach present, which allows us to be comfortable on the networking side with having it as an open environment. Obviously, there are some restrictions that still exist on those machines. Those are just our base level networking security, and obviously, students won't be able to access anything inappropriate online. Just exactly what we need them to, which is games. As I mentioned here, for security, we use basic just Windows Defender to track our viruses or malware. We don't have anything else, any additional layer on top of that. We keep it lightweight for a reason, but also those machines they're on their own environment. So if anything goes wrong on those machines, it's very easy for us to isolate them. and it's an easy fix most of the time. So we haven't run into any major issues yet with security. So we are hoping to keep that track record alive. But again, we always constantly have a coach or sponsor present while people are using the machines. All the machines and screens are visible from where the coach can be. So we make sure that our coaches are keeping an eye on our kids' usage, and 99% of the time that we spend in there is playing or practicing, and that other 1% may be VOD review or some sort of team bonding. So again, we keep a tight lock on the machines as far as personnel goes, but we like to keep our machines open for those reasons. Just to talk briefly about the Nintendo Switch, I know that Brock had mentioned that Smash players do not prefer to play on Wi-Fi. That is very true, just because of the Nintendo Switch's networking, just in general, just outside of even the scholastic environment, is not great. However, during the COVID-19 pandemic, we did have an online bracket that we ran, and in order to get that to work, there are some special tuning that you have to pay attention to in order to get peer-to-peer connection to work. So we can talk a little bit more about that if anyone has any more questions regarding Nintendo Switch networking quirks, but it wasn't as plug and play as getting our VLAN set up. And we were not using Wi-Fi. We were using a LAN adapter, but still getting peer-to-peer to work on a school network and school environment is not as easy and plug and play as it seems. So I'm sure that it's a little bit useful to know that peer-to-peer connection needs to be enabled in your local network for the Nintendo Switches to work. And then briefly, I want to run down tips for purchasing equipment. Obviously, as we mentioned, this entire conference is brought to you by Bytespeed, and Bytespeed is an excellent choice when looking to outfit your esports program with hardware. And so here is just kind of some tips and advice as you go through either the process with Bytespeed or with your vendors. I say work with your current Chromebook or technology vendors just because when we spoke with Bytespeed, we spoke with Acer. They kind of worked together to get us a great deal. Acer, we had just signed a deal for the Chromebooks for our students, again, being one-to-one in a pretty big school district. So with a lot of money involved there, they were more than willing to help us out and work with us to support our esports program in exchange for having their logo on our jerseys, which we wear proudly because Acer is one of our partners at Naperville 203. So I always say reach out to your current vendors because they most of the time are pretty big companies that want to work with esports programs and teams just like you. Reach out to companies like Dell, Acer, that frequently partner with esports programs. As I mentioned, Bytespeed, another great option that can work even with Dell or Acer to make something happen. Again, it goes back to right now we're in a position where students are getting Chromebooks. And so if your district is partnered with a vendor that is doing Chromebooks, they may or may not have a gaming line. Dell has Alienware, Acer has Predator. There are more than enough companies that have gaming lines that may be able to help as well. Inquire about sponsorships if that is allowed by your school administration. As I mentioned, a sponsorship package for us at Naperville 203 includes having a spot on our team's jersey, and that helps with, of course, making it more affordable to get some hardware in your lab. As Brock had mentioned, I personally tell everyone to spend now and avoid upgrading later. Just because if you think about the figures, I believe in and this is all public information that we've posted in newspapers and whatnot. I think at Naperville we spent close to $20,000 on each lab, and that's because we got 15 machines each. And so to a lot of tech, bigger tech organizations within the scholastic space, that is doable at a certain extent. So we really had the mentality that we wanted to strike the iron while it's hot, purchase now, and then in 4 to 5 years, look to start our refresh schedule. And in here, I say 3 to 4 years if viable. It depends on what your school district, how often your school district does refresh technology. And Naperville, we refresh every 3 to 4 years. However, it's definitely overkill when you're spending a good amount of money on a good machine. So if you're spending the money now, getting those good machines into your labs, you can extend this refresh period a bit longer. You'll get more stretching your dollar, if you will. Work with all parts of your esports program to make informed decisions, not just a director or purchasing manager. The person who's in charge of your esports program on campus should definitely be involved in the purchasing for the machines. I know that sometimes a need will come from a student or a director, and then it'll get pushed up the pipeline, and someone up top makes a decision without reaching back down and understanding what the need is. So make sure to keep everybody involved. If it's your athletic director, if it's your student activities director, if it's esports, of course, director, make sure to keep them involved. And then I also kind of have an aside here is that we involved our students when it came to what mice and keyboard we would be purchasing, just because we want our primary end users, right? We want to make sure that they're comfortable and they're successful on our hardware. Of course, we gave them the option to bring in their own hardware, and some do, some don't. Some do prefer the stuff that we have in our lab, or some do not have the kind of peripherals or even machine at home that they can be practicing with. So it was important that we got something comfortable, something gamer-esque. But as I mentioned in this next tab here, do not purchase a product just because it says for gamers. Purchase a product that has the correct specifications for your scope. With peripherals, the gamer tag is a little bit more important for a lot of the students, but when you're getting if you're speccing out a build, make sure you don't fall into the trap of, well, this is a desktop for gamers and it's got the RGB lights and it's got all the fancy bells and whistles. You want something that will fit the specifications. Brock's mock builds were perfect example of a good build without having to go over the top with all of the extra bells and whistles. So that's how we wanted to keep you informed, and we would love to answer any questions that you may have regarding IT requirements. If you do not have any questions, I really appreciate you stopping by. I know there are a few other sessions going on, so we appreciate you being here. But again, if you have any questions, we are here to answer them.
Yeah, for sure. I'd like to say thank you again for taking your time to join in this session, and also any other sessions you decide to join. We really appreciate everybody being here and being involved in this conference.
All right, so we have a question here from Mr. Brad Miller. When setting up your labs how far in advance did you start working with your district on things? So I can answer that question, and then Brock, you can kind of tune in as well. At Naperville, we confronted I say confront, we spoke with our IT pretty early on in the year. So I want to say our meeting happened in September, and we started discussing the need for hardware, and then I believe we were set up by January. So that kind of timeline in between those months were speccing out machines, thinking about minimum usage, thinking about if we wanted the space that we're going to be using to be multi-purpose, or if we wanted it just to be specific to esports, and how the security aspect plays into it. So I believe from start to finish, we started talking to them in September, and it we were able to get everything set up over winter break, including furniture and whatnot, and we were ready by January. So we were pretty quick on the draw. I think it would be fair to say, if you were to approach IT and start preliminary talks with either your administration or whatnot, that 4 to 5 months to me seems like a good, reasonable time. Just because, especially with us, we also had to pick out a room in our school and find space that we knew that wasn't going to be multi-purpose. But that was, again, a request from our upper admin and IT, is that we wanted to keep these machines safe because we were custom buying them. So, yeah, great question. Brock, how about you?
So situationally, it might be a little different. Again, we're Southern Illinois. We're as far down south as you can get before being in Kentucky, small town. So we didn't have a whole lot of funding or anything like that. So I always say when we talk to newer schools, like get the conversation started as soon as you're ready to. So, and I say as you're ready to, as soon as you got the information to stand ground on. So when we move forward, we went and talked to our local board, we talked to our Rotary Club, we talked to community members, things like that, just to get the information out there that this is not just kids sitting in the basement playing video games. This is more than just that. It's, it's opening up the opportunities. If we put the proper funding, we put the proper equipment in these students' hands, that it could open up scholarship opportunities, not just for gaming, but if you caught the opening session there, he talked about shoutcasting and media and design and all these different avenues that one centralized thing like esports can open up for all the kids. So for us, I started talking to our principal at the time. He's now our superintendent. And I said, hey, this is something that's kind of going, and I think this will be a good thing if we can do this. Here's the information I had. And it probably took me 2 years or so to really wear him down to the point where he said, okay, let's try this. So there, I was like, oh boy, now it's real, and we were the only team in the southern area. And I think we're still, as far down as we are, one of the only ones that we have going on. So we've been going on for about 6 years now. That first year, I literally had probably 8 students walking across the backyard of our high school carrying their PCs, every Sunday just to come in and game an hour or two, once a week. Now we go from that to after school daily, 5 days a week with our own equipment. And we're, kind of moving into having the proper equipment where we're building our first official lab. Whereas Andy mentioned, he's been part of building a couple different labs. Now we're starting to get to experience the proper equipment. So getting the information out there as soon as you can, giving the different administrative, the different board members, the different community members, the just the success stories and what it could lead to, and things like that. Whenever we went and presented prior to COVID-19, I'd always take a couple students with me. That's actually part of my my responsibility requirements of our club side. If you're a vice president or president of the club, you got to present with me publicly. And I think that's fantastic because I could stand up in front of, administrative and teachers and things like that for hours and hours, and the information will be heard. But when a student does it, that's the end result. And not only do you feel the information, but you feel the passion and things that really hits home for these kids. So sorry for that long-winded response, but it's something that really hits home with me.
That was a great answer. And a great question, Brad. Thank you. Anybody else have any other questions? We'd love to respond. And then, of course, feel free, if it's not during this session, feel free to reach out to us in the next few days. I should have added my email here to the end of it. But Brock, I know that you had mentioned in your previous session that people can reach out to you at any time regarding these topics. And of course, I am available as well. Please do reach out to us if you have any questions, or throughout the year when you're getting set up or you're starting your preliminary talks. We'd love to help be a part of that and answer any questions that you may have. So
Yeah, and again, I'll put it in chat. I did it in my previous one. Please feel free if you have even the information that I did in the prior session about just esports in general and how we kind of got going and different things like that. I have PowerPoints that we've used to present that I will share with you. Take them to your local administrator of your board. Feel free to use any of that. If it helps another student in not just the state of Illinois, but anywhere, get esports going, we're helping that movement. We're helping everybody get these opportunities for just students. It's not just about the 500-600 kids in my high school, but it's the thousands and thousands that are out there that don't have these opportunities. So please feel free to contact me with any questions. I would be happy to answer those or find out the answer as soon as I can from another member of IHSEA for sure.
Again, if there are any other questions, you can please reach out now, or again, reach out via email. We are here and available. I believe during this time there are some other sessions. So if you wanted to go ahead and take off, we are totally okay. We will stay here in case people have any more questions, but otherwise we'll be here. Thank you again for attending. Thank you, Brian. Thank you, Stephen. Thank you for stopping by.